server. Here's Daniel using Node's kind of built-in HTTP module. Where have the slides gone? Oh no, the slides have disappeared. There we go. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, the server we built obviously was super simple. We weren't really doing very much with it. Using the HTTP module that comes with Node, we had one function that was triggered anytime any request came in. And that it works okay. It's not the end of the world. But one function that handles everything is just a little bit messy. And of course, you would route it through to kind of other functions based on the type of request or the URL or the method or whatever. But Express does that out of the box. Now, Express is just a library. It's just a library that helps you build servers using Node. It is the standard. If anyone asks you about building servers using Node, they're probably, almost certainly talking about using Express. Now, you know from Tuesday that you technically can do it without Express. You can do it using the HTTP module built into Node, but this is the standard. This is what everyone uses. Sort of platforms like Google Firebase and Azure, and even though they're not necessarily using Express, they all often support Express style sort of function definitions. So it really is what you want to be learning. So from its website, in big text at the top of the website, it's a fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. Now, unopinionated pretty much means that it doesn't want to tell you how to structure your code or how to structure your project. It is just a server library. It's not really going to help you with database actions or really like rendering HTML for your users. It's not really going to help you with that. It is just the server part of it, and it just sort of provides an extra layer of ease. So in my opinion, it's easier to build servers using Express over HTTP, over the Node module HTTP. But the kind of biggest thing now is that there are tons of libraries out there that support it and kind of work with it and add on functionality. So it's hard to know why it originally got so popular. I think it was probably one of the sort of first, just one of the first Node server libraries. But ultimately, the reason that it gets more popular and the reason that people use it now is because there is a community around it, and there's a community of libraries that allow you to handle forms really easily and handle files really easily and authentication and all of that Express doesn't give you out of the box, but it's relatively straightforward to set that stuff up because there are all of these libraries that have been built around Express. before we start building our API using Express, we need to talk about APIs themselves. Today, we're specifically going to talk about REST APIs. There are all sorts of different ways to make your data available to users or developers. Any way that you kind of expose your code or expose your data is an API. A REST API stands for Representational State Transfer, which is a bit of a stupid term. I don't really know why it's called that. I don't really understand what that means, but you will see the REST acronym a lot. It's basically a set of rules that allow you to get data, create data, update data, and destroy data. That's pretty much all it is. It's just a set of rules that you can follow. There are other ways to do it. Today we're going to look at REST APIs, and we're going to build a RESTful API using Express. So HTTP methods. HTTP on Tuesday was the Node module that allowed us to build a server. Today and always, HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is the kind of original way that servers and browsers communicate with one another. It's how data gets sent over the internet. And there are things called methods, or actually sometimes they're known as verbs, because it kind of describes what the server should be doing or what the request should do. So you can send a request with the method being get. So we want to get some data, we want to read some data from a server. You can send a request where the method is post. So posting is sort of a synonym for sending. So we're sending data with our request, and usually post is used to create something new. Patch, we are also going to be sending some data, but a patch in sort of software terms is kind of an update. So we'll be sending some data with our patch request, and usually it is to update something that already exists on our server. So we're not going to create anything new. We're just going to update something new, something that's already there. Like if you, I don't know, edit a Facebook post or edit a Twitter. You can't edit tweets, can you? I don't know. If you edit something, you probably are making a patch request because that data already exists on the server, but you want to tell the server, actually, I just want to update it, I want to change it a little bit. And when you delete something, you, unsurprisingly, use the delete HTTP method. So REST APIs, or the REST rules, are pretty much a combination of the different HTTP methods and some URLs. Now, this is not actually all of them, because we'll have editing and stuff, but this is pretty much the URLs that we want to use. And the idea of combining URLs with HTTP methods is actually to keep things simple. It's to simplify the number of URLs that are being used in our app. We could have different URLs for every single action that the user does, but if we combine HTTP methods with these URLs, our directory's URL could actually perform sort of 3, 4, 5 different actions depending on the type of request that has been sent to that URL. So REST APIs, we have our HTTP methods plus these URLs, so /directories, /5. Now this is just an example. It is an ID of some sort, but in this case we want to see the 5th directory, so we're passing it directory with an ID of 5. And directories /new, so that's not an ID, but that's a different URL, and we want to tell the browser, the server, that we would like to create a new directory or something like that. So these are a few URLs that we're going to use. And if we combine the two, so on this first line we have get /directories. That is going to be almost like a home page for this directories information. We just want to see all of the directories. Then if we go down to this section, we want to post some data. We're sending some data to /directories. And when we do this, we're sending a new directory to our server. We're not sending it to an ID in particular. We're just sending it to the kind of root of all of the directories, because we don't know anything about the directory yet. We don't know anything about the data. Maybe the server will reject our data. And so therefore we post it to just the root directories. Now you can see this URL, we get directory number 5, so we want to view some data about that, but we also have patch and delete. So if you want to edit that directory, you can send some data to your server at the same URL that you used to get the data for directory number 5. And if you want to delete directory number 5, you use the exact same URL, but you send a delete request. So this is an example of how we can use a smaller number of URLs combined with all of the HTTP methods to produce a relatively easy to follow set of rules rules of kind of combinations that are relatively user-friendly. So actually it's also user-focused. If they see this in their URL, in their taskbar, or address bar, they will kind of understand that they're seeing the page to create a new directory. They're seeing directory number 5. They probably won't see these, but it's slightly user-focused and it's also developer-focused as well. So that's a quick look at APIs and specifically RESTful APIs. Now, over the next few weeks, we're going to be doing loads of RESTful APIs. We're going to be building a load. So don't worry if you can't really remember these combinations. They will eventually get in your head. But now we're going to actually just do quite a lot of coding. There's only a few more slides about serving static files. Now, rather than APIs express, no, to the code editor, no, I didn't want to do that. I thought there was one missing. Okay, so this is how we get started. In fact, this is almost copied from the Express Hello World example on their website. So if we want to listen for GET requests to this URL, to just slash, we will talk about app in a minute, but Express creates something that we've called app. and we call the function get. So when there is a get request to this URL, so just slash, like the home page, call this function. And we have our request and our response, just like we did with the HTTP module. So when there's a get request to slash, here's some information about the request that was sent, here's the response object, and we want to send. Remember on Tuesday it was end, but I did write send. This is why. We want to send some data back to the user, and in this case we're just going to send a string called hello world. And then down here, here's where we just sort of start the server. So the general structure to set up Express apps, I don't think it needs to be in this order. I don't think it's actually required, but generally this is how it is structured. So we'll have app get directories, app post directories, app delete directories /5, and then at the bottom, once we've set up all of those routes, so a route is a combination of a URL and an HTTP method. Once we've set up all of our routes, then we start the server running, in this case at localhost 3000. So we're going to start from pretty much nothing. We first need to create a Npm project. Has that done it, or I did it in the wrong place? 16. Okay, so we want to install Express. And now, and you can see, I know you probably have played around with installing libraries so far. That didn't take any time at all. That shows that Express is really lightweight and really well optimized. Okay, so let's first just look at what the kind of root Express object gives us. So we're going to run node mon server. So there's quite a lot. It's not huge, but there's a few things on here that we're going to use. So JSON and text. These are kind of to do with the data that we're sending to and from the server. We'll look at how to use those a bit later. Static, we are going to use that one later. I've included some slides about that. I'm looking for request, response, application. Create application. That's a slightly weird syntax. I wasn't expecting that, but that's what we want. So generally, you're going to have app. It doesn't have to be called app, but this is just sort of what Express documentation usually uses. So application, these are the exposed prototypes. Why is it not giving me create application? Function create application, is it just application? Yeah, let's have a look. App single. Express application is not a function. What? But create application didn't come up. Okay, let's. Oh, I wanted to show you the Express site as well. Actually, the guides are pretty useful. So we'll look at using middleware a little bit later. Certainly the API reference is pretty good. This is the hello world that I just showed you. And we don't call create application or application, we just call express. So again, it's one of those things that you do once and then never again for 6 months. So that's why I'd forgotten. Okay, so app looks like this. So there's actually kind of more functions and properties and stuff on app than there are on Express. And we can already recognize a few of these. We've got get, post, patch. Options is actually another HTTP method. All that will kind of respond a little bit like the HTTP module. So let's find, I assume we're not using 5 yet, we're still using 4. So Express, and this is an application. So it matches all HTTP verbs. There's not a huge number of functions or methods on an app, and really I don't really see when I've certainly not used that. Get, listen, we will use that param. So let's set up a request, a root of get directories. So the first argument is the URL. The second argument is a callback, which receives a request and a response. So let's log out a request. Then down here, we want to listen. That's just telling me callback, but I'm sure port, yeah, there we go, port, and then callback. This is kind of not necessary, but console log listening on 3000. That callback gets fired when the app has successfully booted up. So it's asynchronous. Starting up quite a complex Express app could take minutes really. So we log something out just to make sure that we have started listening. Okay, so let's go to localhost 3000/directories. A request object just got logged out. And there's loads of stuff in here. It's almost not worth looking in the console. So let's look in the Express documentation. Base URL is going to give us the kind of URL that is used to. It's slightly confusing to explain. Base URL is similar to the mount path property, except mount path returns the match pattern. Okay, I think I'll have an example. So Express router. No, let's do that at the end. Let's not worry about that. Body is interesting. We're going to use that for post. So when you send data, the data that you send is included in the body of the request. IP, we can actually find out the IP address of the user who's making that request. We can get access to the params. So if we name is Sam, so we make another request, and we'll log out request.params.name. undefined, what about just params? Hey, directory console. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Oh no, okay, I remember. Again, I'll come back to that later. So there's sort of two different params objects. One you have to sort of do something with, and that's this one, the query params, or is it query? Query, that's what I wanted. Query. Okay, so those are kind of known as query params, which is why I am confused. Okay, great. So that's one way how we can do sort of dynamic stuff on the server. The user can send different data through to the server using a query string or params. Let's look at params now. So we want directory /5. That's our next get route. So get directories /5. So params. We've got an empty object. Okay, so we could say get directory. We've got a function somewhere called get directory, and we want to get directory number 5. But that's really not great. We want 6 as well, and we want 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we want this part of the URL to be dynamic. And the way we denote dynamic parts of the URL is by using this sort of colon and then a key syntax. In this case, we are going to refer to that part of the URL as an ID. So here, request.params.id is going to go through to get directory. Let's directories.js. Let's say get directory ID module.exports is get directory. Okay, so now we can make that request. It's logged out twice for some reason. I think the browser's just making 2 requests. So we can see we have access to 5 there, then 190 here, then in fact anything. So anything that appears here appears as a param. It's a parameter that can change. It uses the key that we give it in this URL, and the params object is constructed dynamically. So let's say params directory ID, then /files inside that directory, then file ID, so directory /5 files /10. We're going to see a different object that has a directory ID of 5 and a file ID of 10. So this way, we're going to have a directory full of meme images or something, and then a directory full of restaurant reviews. We can now, at this path, we're going to show the user a link to memes and a link to restaurants, because those are the directories that we are allowing them to explore. Then once they've gone to directories / memes or directories / restaurants, we're going to show them a list of the files inside each of those directories, and then they can click on those and they will go to directories / memes / files / carmeme.png or something like that, and then we'll show that file to the user. So we haven't yet made any responses. So to make a response, to send a response back to the user, say, welcome to the Directory Explorer. So we go all the way back to directories, and we do get the message, welcome to the Directory Explorer. It's not super nice. Maybe we can have a little page or view or layout, let's say layout.js. HTML is HTML. Body. So we're going to have a function that takes the body and wraps it in HTML, and we have the head in here maybe, and we can add more stuff to that later. And then we want the body to be maybe a main element, content, and I don't know, we can expand that a little bit more. But because we're dealing with strings, we're going to have these very, very simple functions to allow us to kind of construct a page that at least is some kind of HTML. So here, welcome to the Directory Explorer, we want body, and then we're going to pass that string, and now it is actually HTML. We do get an HTML element, a head element, a body element, and a main element. We also get some other stuff, but that's because I have an extension. Let's say when you click on the extension. Okay, so that extension is disabled now, so we're only getting those HTML elements that we've defined in that string. We can do an H1. So we're going to have body that is going to be an H1. We want H1 from here. Okay. So this sort of thing is incredibly basic. I think it's actually kind of nice practice to do this sort of thing. Oh, I've done that wrong. Body, so we need HTML as well. HTML. It's quite nice practice to do this because, again, there are loads of tools to help you with constructing HTML pages, not just using strings. So we've got welcome to the Directory Explorer. Now in directories, we want to get all the directories, and I actually am going to return a promise here. We're going to use file system. fs is require fs, and fs.promises dot directory read directory. Did I do this on Tuesday? I can't quite remember. A path to a file, it must use the file. Get all directories, I don't think that will work. And then here, we're going to have page content. So we take the h1, we set that as the page content. We're then going to say directories is get all directories. Then directories, no, we want that to be a promise, get all directories. Then directories. We can move this in here, so while this is happening, the user is going to be waiting. So this could take several seconds to read a load of data from the database, and until that has happened, the user won't receive a response. That's the difference between putting it inside a promise callback and outside just in this get callback. So let's see what we get. I have a feeling it's not going to work. Aha, okay, so I've got, right, so we do have, it is going to work. Okay, so we've got restaurants and memes. So get all directories, then all files, return all files dot filter, file name dot includes a dot. So we don't want any of these because read directory gives you everything in that directory, including files and folders. So we're just going to say if it has a dot in it, it's a file. It's not strictly true, but never mind. Okay, so good. We've got memes, node modules, and restaurants. Let's go back to our server. So we can have directories dot for each directory. Let's create I quite enjoy this, a bit weird, but let's create an A tag with content. A tag. I think I need to do this. A directory. Then we're going to add that onto page content. A tag. Excellent. A is not a function. I didn't export it. Memes, node modules, restaurants. Let's look at what we've got. We do actually have 3 A tags. I don't know why they're all next to each other. Is that just standard? Is that just how it should look? Or is it because this is a really bad basic HTML document? Never mind, we'll come back later to serving CSS files and other things. So, is that me? They're not in a list. Well, okay, yeah. So I also expect to see other things in here. I expect to see sort of, oh right, user agent style sheet. So is there actually no user agent styles applied to an A tag? Fine. Okay, but we're showing a bunch of A tags. At the moment, they don't have links. So let's add links. So we want to go to directories / directory. We're going to use the name as the ID because we're not really dealing with objects here. We're just dealing with folder names. So I think that's fine for now. Generally, you are going to be dealing with objects, and you want the link to go to directories / directory.id or something like that. So this second argument is going to be 2. We have href 2. I think it might want some quotes around there. Great. We now have a link to memes, a link to node modules, and a link to restaurants. It's logging out here, get directory memes, get directory node modules, get directory restaurants. So we can see that those links are actually working. They're hitting this callback. They're going through to get directory, which is over here, and it doesn't actually do anything yet. So get directory contents. That's really what we want. And in fact, we can pretty much copy the same thing. So we're going to have ID, and it's going to be /ID, then all files, and this time let's just keep all files. So get directory contents, passing the ID, then files, and it's not amazing, but let's just do the same thing. Let page content equals body, or h is right, just an empty string. Then files, for each file, let's go to file, however we want /files /file /directories /something /files the name of the file. This something is going to be the ID up from the params. So we're at directories /restaurants. We're actually seeing an empty page. So that's good. What we can do, if files.length is 0, page content add, oops, we got no content here. Okay, great, we've got a very nice looking error message. Let's go back to directories, let's look at node modules. This one, we do get quite a lot of directories. I am going to change display block. Let's just do that in layout. Head. This is going to be weird. Style /style. A display block. Okay, great. We've got them in a list. So we kind of have a website that we can start exploring. Okay. That's enough GET requests. We now want to handle creating a new directory. Okay, so we were going to file ID. What happens when we click on that? Nothing, we just get console log request params, node modules, array flatten. Okay. So, on this home page, let's add a form. A form has, as we saw the other day, we need the form tag, we need an action, which is the URL for the data to go, and we need a method, which is the type of request we're going to be making. So to create a new directory on this computer, we want to create a form that has the action, the destination, the action of directories, of slash directories, and the method of post. We want to post some data to slash directories, and then our server is going to create that directory. So let's just do a new form. Form. I mean, this is pretty weird, and we'll look at templating engines later on, but this hopefully is relatively easy to kind of understand. Once you add in templating engines and things that absolutely make your life easier, it suddenly becomes, there's more syntax to learn and there's more libraries to learn. This, at the moment, we are just dealing with strings within strings, and it's pretty straightforward. So type text, name is new directory name, and input type submit value create the directory. Okay, so we want to export the new form. In fact, let's just do that, equals new form. Okay, so at the top of this directories page, so kind of after that page content, we're going to add our new form. Input type submit. That's an annoying thing about doing this in strings. So we've now got a form on our page. Let's look at this. LP checked. What is that? Again, I assume it's some last pass. Yeah, whatever. I assume it's last pass. That's LP. So I want to create a directory called, I don't know, secret things. So we've made a request. We can look in the network tab to have a look at what request we just made. We made a request to /directories, which actually is correct. We've included this query string, new directory name equals secret things. So the form already knows to take all of our names of input fields and construct an object for our server. The method is get, which is not what we want. we don't want to make a GET request, we want to make a POST request. So for this to work, we need to specify the method on the form. So secret things, create the directory, and now we do get an error. Express has said, okay, you're receiving a POST request to /directories, but we haven't yet set up the route to receive a POST request at /directories. So after all the gets, it doesn't actually matter about being after all the gets, it's just nice for neatness. So we'll set up a handler for posting to /directories. And now we can look at the body of the request. Undefined. Network, let's look at. Yeah, okay. It's not the body. When you're making requests using, those of you who have done sort of front-end stuff with JavaScript communicating with the server, you'll know that you include your data in the body, but HTML forms include it in an object called form data. So that is a bit weird. So secret things, create the directory. We are including a form data object, which is pretty similar to how our body looked. But now, so form, let's look in here. Methods, param, body, pass URL. I've completely forgotten how to do this. Express JSON. Okay, request body contains key value pairs. Undefined, URL encoded. Right, let's have a look just at the base request. Let's see what we have. Okay. So there's all the headers. We'll look at the headers in a minute, but I want to find the top. So there's loads of data in the request. Okay, here we go. It is an incoming message. That's actually the type of object that a request is. That's how Express refers to a request. Really, to you and me, it is just a request, but Express calls it something else. Socket. I don't know why there's something called socket. In sort of maybe 2 weeks, we'll talk about a different way to communicate with a server, and that is known as a WebSocket. So I'm not sure entirely why that's there. Yeah, I think this is all still the socket stuff. Connection, again, that is to do with the socket. Okay, so we're down at the headers. With every request you send, and also with every response that is sent from a server, there's a headers object. Your browser is adding some, your computer is adding some. So in this case, it's telling us where the request came from. In this case, it came from localhost 3000. Ooh, what's just happened here? It came from localhost 3000. Content length, so that actually is telling us that we are sending some content with our request, and it's 29 characters long. The user agent, this is always included with every request. So if you want to not allow Windows users, you could look at the user agent and serve them one page, and Mac users, you could serve them another page. Content type is a header on this request. It is a URL encoded form. So that is what an HTML form element uses to send the data. It sends it as a URL encoded form. Most of these, you will very occasionally use them, but not particularly often. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to look somewhere else in the Express API. So getting started, basic routing. Post got a post message. URL encoded, no, form. Accept multi-part encoded forms. This is not actually what we want, because this is using an external library called multi-party, and what we've got is not multi-part. Params, resource, middleware. Oh, how do I do it? Routing, overriding. How do I get Express? Aha, there we go. It's middleware. So earlier I mentioned JSON and text as middleware to tell Express how it should deal with the data being sent back and forth. So middleware is something that sort of sits just before your code, and it tells Express, okay, like before anything, like in the middle of the client sending the request and me receiving it and the server receiving it, do something in the middle. That's what middleware means. So if you're generally going to be dealing with JSON, you use the JSON middleware. Text, use the text middleware. In this case, we're going to use the URL encoded middleware. So fingers crossed, it's now going to allow me directories, okay. So to use middleware, we call a function use. And in this case, we're using URL encoded. And so we call a function called URL encoded. That returns an object to us, which we then pass on to the use function. So, body parser, deprecated, undefined, extended, provide extended option. Well, that's what? Never mind. Okay, so we're going to make our post request again with our form data, and this time we should somewhere body, here we go. So it was in the body all along, we just needed that middleware. Request.body. Request.body is this object. So that's kind of one reason why Express is really nice. It has some of these built-in middlewares. Of course, there's loads of third-party middlewares that people have made. If you were using HTTP, the HTTP module, you would probably have to kind of mess about with converting the URL encoded form into some sort of string and then into the JSON object and whatever. So Express you just say, okay, I want you to pass the data as URL encoded data, and then in our functions we just get it as an object. So let's say new directory name is request.body.new directory name. Yep. Then in directories, we're going to have a function called create new directory. And it's going to take an ID, fs.promises.create.link. Create a new link, also known as a hard link. I'm pretty sure it is link. I might be making it up. So let's. Oh, that's not worked. Okay, I'm fairly sure we're going to use the function link. I'm just going to hope for the best. Create new directory. So we are going to create a new directory at this / whatever ID we pass through to create new directory. Now down here, we import create new directory. We pass it new directory name. Then response.send done, or actually, yeah, no, hang on, let's do done. Done creating. The new path argument must be one of type string, buffer URL, receive type undefined. Okay, I guessed and I was wrong. Directories, link, existing path, new path, right. So it's not that. fs create directory. Make directory, I should have guessed. Make directory, done. Okay, so done creating. We now have a directory called secret things. But what we want to do is send our user to that directory page. So if we go back to here, we're now dynamically reading all the directories, so we do see secret things in this list. If we create, I don't know, TV, create that directory, what we actually want to do as a user is to then go straight to that TV page. So what we can do, response.redirect, we can redirect our user to directories / new directory name. Let's go back, movies, and we've gone straight through to the movies directory. So response.redirect is actually sending a response back to the user. It's just a special type of response that says, like, okay, I'm done, but I now want you to make another request to this particular URL, which then comes all the way back in to app.get directories / ID, and therefore we see this, oops, we got no content here message. Okay. Now what if we want to do some validation? If we won't allow long directory names, new directory name dot length is greater than 10. We don't want to create it. So if it's less than 10, we want to respond with some kind of error, and we set the status code of the response to an appropriate status code. So HTTP status codes, let's find one. So if it's too long, HTTP cats is far more interesting. No content, it'll be in the 400s probably. Forbidden, probably. Not acceptable, yeah, probably not acceptable, which is 406. So we set the status code of 406, then we send some kind of message, too long. So now, okay, this page isn't the best, but we can see in our network tab, it is actually coming through as an error. So you always want to be using appropriate status codes so that your users' browsers or the developers who are consuming your API at the other end, so that they can handle your errors in the correct way. I think let's have a bit of question time, then let's do the static files, and then we'll continue building out all of the RESTful routes. So does anyone have any questions so far? And they can be sort of on HTTP, on requests and responses generally, on Express, and any of the sort of syntax of Express. Does anyone have anything they want to raise now? As usual, it's silent. Okay. So we're sending that error, we're handling it if it's too long, and of course this you'd want to take out into some validation function, and you'd want to check a whole different set of things. But what we could in fact do, so redirect send too long, we want to send status 406. Could we redirect to just/directories with a status of 406? Could we do that? I don't know. Status 302, no. Aha, but we do have this new directory name. Oh, right, no, we're coming through all the way here. So /errors equals true. Okay, so this is a little bit weird. So we've made a request with invalid data. We've been redirected back to this page. We're seeing errors equals true. It's a little bit odd, but I think it's kind of nice and clear. So we're redirecting the user back to the directory's URL, but with this query on the end. So new form. Let's do some kind of error div class error div it doesn't like that, does it? Okay. So if request.query.errors, then we want error div to contain the new form. Otherwise, we just want the new form. So let's make the same request again. We do have errors true. We can look in elements, and we have a div with the class error. Now, rather than adding more styles into here, what I want to do is load up a style sheet, a CSS file that we have somewhere in this directory. So let's add in a link. No. How do I add? I feel style sheet tag HTML. Yeah, it is link. Okay. I just so rarely do it. Link rel style sheet. I can't remember the last time I wrote this. href styles.css. Okay. This is not super nice. Let's do a bit of formatting. Okay, that'll do. So now, when we load the page, up here in the head, we should have a link to style CSS, and we're getting an error. Refuse to apply style from style CSS because it's MIME type. Text HTML is not a supported style sheet MIME type. So what's that talking about? It's actually because our Express server is responding with this page that says cannot get style CSS. So what we want to do, we want to have a static directory, of styles CSS, maybe our index.js, our sort of front end code, and we want to serve all of the files from this static folder. So these slides. So maybe some other HTML files, like if you have, quite often you'd want a sort of static error page. If your server just goes down completely, if your server breaks, it is you use the status code 500, and in that case you could actually say have everything in a big try catch, and if there's an error that goes horribly wrong, you can still fall back to a static 500 error page, and the CSS and JS files that all of your pages need to load up. So here, again, it's middleware. Express.static is the middleware we want to use, and we pass it the directory that we want it to serve. So we're going to use URL encoded, and we're going to use static, and I'm going to use the static directory. And now loading style CSS gives us Nothing. That's good. We want error, background, pink, color, red. Okay, we've reloaded that page. We have seen that we've got that. And we do have this, okay, padding. There we go. We are serving all of the files in our static folder. So this is where the JavaScript that you've been writing before, this is where your kind of compiled React code might go. And your server is dealing with all the sort of dynamic requests and then also allowing you to serve up your JavaScript or your CSS file. So the serving a static folder is pretty common and pretty useful. Okay, so we have errors. I'm running out of things. Movies, memes, projects. There's always a projects folder, isn't there? Create the directory. We have been redirected to projects, but I've got an error. No such file or directory. Styles CSS. That, I think, I think it's because it's looking for style CSS inside directories / projects. Therefore, I think, remember on Tuesday I said, this might not work, but this is very much the type of thing that I would try if I get this error. Remember on Tuesday I said that using kind of relative paths isn't so great, and using path dot resolve then process dot what is it, current working directory, then static. I just want to see what that actually gives us. Users, blah, 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 lessons express static. Yeah, maybe that'll work. Okay, that didn't work. I also think I'm doing this wrong. Path resolve, no path resolve, relative. That's directory name. Oh, I can't remember. Whatever. I kind of don't really care. So someone just said that will do. Nah, it won't. Okay, it's not a big deal really. Or unless that. / directories / styles. If we hard code it, hey, that one worked. Great, that one worked. Good. We don't really have to change anything. Okay. Next, we're going to do post. Oh, we can patch. Okay. So on the page that is showing the projects directory, we could have So we've got new form here. Let's create a new one called edit form and edit form. The method here is going to be patch.
Sorry, Sam. Sorry to interrupt. I missed the last bit. What did you trying to do with static? Like you want to have the style
This.
combined. Yeah.
So I thought it was going to be related to path resolve, but actually it wasn't. So that's probably confusing. So I will remove that. The important thing that I changed was in the layout. So if you have an HTML page that is served, and in here you have like dot slash then the file name, it will try to load a file that is relative to the kind of directory that you're looking at the moment. So it's gonna try to find directories slash styles. If we added a slash at the end, it's actually going to find directory slash projects slash styles. So it worked on the very root, no it didn't, on just directories, apparently. It worked here because this is kind of the last slash, and so it looks for a relative file. But as soon as we go to another one, it's looking for slash directories slash styles, which is not in our static folder. So if you try to load up a file that starts with a slash, that's basically saying whatever the origin is. In our case, it's localhost 3000 slash this. Like it's an absolute path versus a relative path. So without that first dot, that allows us to load up the styles on any page that we like. Does that answer your question, Params?
Yes. Yeah. What if we want to combine with our JavaScript file?
So then on here we can have script source dot index.js.
Oh, okay.
And then directories, script y, it doesn't like it.
It becomes srrc.
Oh, nice. And I think I need to close it as well, because script tags are weird. Okay, so now we have, oh, I've done relative again, haven't I? So now we're loading up index.js. We should be able to see this console log, hello. That is now running just like you would have your front end vanilla JavaScript normally. So we can do some quick document.query selector all the A tags for each A set timeout. So we have a little delay, then a.style.transform equals scale 2. Let's see what that does. Nothing. Great. Why doesn't that do anything? that's what it should be doing, which is not really what I wanted it to do. I think disable cache index.js. Oh, I know, because that doesn't exist yet. So let's move that down to the bottom underneath the body. Okay, great. That looks positively awful. Transform origin is left. Okay. So this is how you can. I mean, this is a pretty bad, but it is a sort of full stack application. So you have rather than loading up loads and loads of JavaScript, which doesn't really show anything, and then once it's finished loading, it makes a request to get all of the directories from your API, and then it puts the directories onto the page, and then it allows the user to interact with it. Doing it this way with a sort of full stack solution, you get the page that already contains the directories, and the JavaScript is just allowing that user interaction. So I don't want to go to a different page, but I want to add some click handler. When I click on this, there's a pop-up, and I do all of that. So this is why you kind of this is how many websites, like the vast majority of websites, work. These days, it is more common to build an API that serves JSON and a front end that's completely separate, but still the vast majority of websites are built like this, where it's sort of a server that's serving your HTML based on the data that you have in a database, plus a little bit of JavaScript that just makes it more interactive. Okay, Florence says, so do we need to know which method to use with response, like response send, response end? Can we find these methods? Yes, so everything is in the Express documentation. Response.end, that was just from the HTTP module, so you can pretty much forget about that. It is response.send, that's what you want to that's what you want to use, and response response.json, I think. It just allows you to send JSON like that. So once upon a time, you had to call another function, response.json, set some JSON, and then send it. I think you had to do something like that. But these days, so here we can send some HTML, we can send some JSON, which it's going to send through as JSON. We don't have to stringify it first. Here you can actually chain these calls. So here where we have status and redirect, we can do that all on one line. But there is a lot to Express, and really to build sort of little servers like this, you only really need to know about the request body, the request params, the response status, response send, and that's kind of it. To build your first few applications, that's really all you need.
Response.send is just to communicate with client side?
Exactly. So let's demonstrate what happens. So in /directories, we have response.send. We're going to have set timeout, and we will wait 5 seconds before we actually send the response. So I'm going to hit reload now. I'm receiving nothing back. It's taken 5.02 seconds, so actually my request really took 0.02 seconds, and my waiting was 5 seconds of that. So HTTP works in a request response cycle. The user will only get something from your server if they have already made a response, already made a request. So you receive the request, you do what you need to do, and no matter how long that takes, I mean, you probably will want to put some timeouts on there. But no matter how long that takes, until you call response.send, it won't actually send anything back to the user. They will kind of be perpetually waiting for data from the server. Okay, so we want to make the patch the edit form. So we've got this edit form, and we want to, so directory, yeah, new directory name, that'll do. Edit the directory. So on this page, let's say page content equals edit form. Let's just set it to edit form so we can go to memes. And we have this edit form. We can go to TV, and we have this edit form. Now, what we'd want to see as a user is TV already in there. You don't want to fill out that form again. Okay, in this case, it's pretty straightforward, but if you had like 100 fields, they made one mistake, they don't want to fill them all out again. So in this case, we can change it to a function. We can send through the ID, and we can set the value of this input field to that ID. So now, when I go to node modules, I can see the node module's name is already there. Go to projects, the project's name is already there. And when I hit edit directory, we're still making a get request. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting meth form, method, patch. Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah. Okay. How can we? Yeah, that's gonna be fun. Okay. So we want to make a patch request to edit the directory. So first, we actually want the action, so the URL that this goes to, we want it to go specifically to directories/ID. So now the request is going to /directories/projects. We can check the action /directories/projects. If we go to a different one, if we go to secret things, we can see the action is directories/secret things. However, HTML form elements can only make GET requests and POST requests. So, following RESTful conventions, we should be using the patch method. However, this form element sees method patch and just says like, I don't know what that means, so I'm going to make a get request. Therefore, we can have an input where the type is hidden. The name is, I don't know, secret method, and the value of this is patch. Again, there is kind of middleware to help you with this sort of thing. I'm not going to go into it now because you're not really going to be building this sort of static server rendered HTML very much. You're not going to be doing that. It's generally going to be JSON. But so we have secret things. It now is making a request to directory/secret things. It has an input field with the type hidden, and the name is secret method. So now if we go through to our server, when we hit this request.body, okay, it's secret, sorry, the phone is going. Secret method is patch, but actually that is in the query string, so let's look at the query. Okay, secret method patch. So if request.query.secret method, well, just if it's patch, let's say, then patch directory, we're going to have a separate function, ID and new name, something like that. Actually, let's just pass in the request and the response. So this is a massive downside of HTML forms, and it's kind of one reason of many why having a front end and a back end and having JavaScript in the front end that deals with sending the data, it's a reason why it's much better, because you don't have to live with the limitations of HTML. But it's really good. It's really good practice. So we want to have this separate function to patch the directory. Let's have a function update directory. So we're going to pass it request.params.id and then request.query.new directory name. Let's go to directories, ID, new name, promises, rename. We take the old path, which is going to be this directory /ID, interpolated of course, and the new name is going to be new name. So update that directory. Then response dot redirect to slash directories slash request query new directory name. So secret things with a bunch of S's, edit the directory, update directory is not defined, great. And we have successfully updated that. Let's do that all over again. So static, okay, probably shouldn't be exposing static to our users, but let's say restaurants, that we want to change that to cafes, edit the directory, and we have edited it. We can go back to directories. Restaurants is no longer there. Instead, we have cafes, and this directory is now called cafes. Okay, finally, we want to deal with deleting, and again, we've got to do the same thing. So if the secret method is delete, then we call delete directory and it's going to be pretty much the same thing. So delete directory, request response, params ID, destroy directory, let's call it that, it's a bit confusing, and then redirect back to the main directories page. Now our edit form let's do no, let's do a delete form. Delete form. Change the secret method to delete. Change this to say delete this directory. Change edit form to delete form. And in the server where we render our directory page, we're going to add page content delete form. Passing in the ID. So we go to TV. Oh, I don't think I created destroy directory, did I? So in here, destroy directory, I think this is unlink, delete a name and possibly the file it refers to, yeah. So if I edit it to say TV shows, edit it, it goes back to this page. If I click delete directory, destroy directory is not defined. And I get an error. Operation not permitted, unlink TV shows. Why? Huh. Maybe I've done unlink wrong. A path to a file if URL provided. Why? Why is it not permitted? fs unlink directory. Well, remove both empty and non-empty. We're trying to remove an empty one. So actually it should be pretty straightforward. Render, what? Right, remove directory. I assumed unlink would do anything, but I think unlink is just for files. Okay, great. We've come back and we're now no longer seeing TV shows. We can delete cafes as well. And it's no longer there. So we now have a Express-powered, sort of pretty awful project that you'd never want to do. You certainly don't want your users to be able to create whatever directories they want. But it's a pretty easy to kind of understand example of getting an Express server up and running and being able to do all of the CRUD actions on it. So creating directories, reading all the directories, updating them, and destroying them. So we've got a little bit of time left. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone have anything you want me to go over, or any suggestions for anything I can add to this project? Okay, that sounds like a no. I think rather than I could do a quick sort of JSON server type thing, but I think there's a plan. There's a plan. I want to stick to the plan. So let's call that a day now. I think this is telling me that Vasile has deployed the exercises that I didn't.